I have been wanting to put my thoughts on autism into a video for some time, and I've not wanted to do it. It's kind of strange to want two different things at the same time, but you do it an awful lot, it seems like. It makes you wonder just how many entities are floating around up in here. But that's a psychosis for another video. I want to do two parts of this video. The first part, I want to explain how I think most people have experienced an autistic episode. And then I got this bell curve here. Is anytime I put too much thought into something, it seems like I always make a bell curve. So then I'll discuss that. Okay, let's start with the autistic episode that I believe you've experienced. Think back to a time when you were the most embarrassed, when you just wanted to crawl up under a rock and die. Don't worry about what caused you to be embarrassed, because I believe it was this thing over here, social tension. Social tension is this background noise that's present in all social interaction. It's not good or bad, it's just low, or it reaches some unbearable point that causes you discomfort. Everybody reacts to it differently and at different levels. But anyway, so during this time when we were the most embarrassed, your body went through physical changes, which is amazing because I got a bombshell I'm going to drop at the end of the video. But your palms sweated, your blood vessels in your face dilated, causing your face to become red and hot. You probably get that knot sensation in your throat, the twist in the gut. But something else also occurred. If you really think back to this most embarrassing moment, you became disconnected. Just for a moment. You could see your body doing their things around you, but you were off the grid. I believe this is your psyche's panic button. It's defense against something that it perceives as a threat, and it just puts you in timeout for a bit. And for most of us, that's a very small moment in time. But what if your psyche decided to hit the panic button at a much lower threat level, just being in the same room with people? And then you can sort of understand what it is like to be full-blown autistic, where your psyche doesn't just push this button, but it just lays on it. And understand that you didn't sit there and think, well, I'm going to be embarrassed right now. This thing just blindsided you out of nowhere. It's automatic, just as it is for an autistic. Now you may be thinking that, yeah, but I was not embarrassed because of this hoodoo voodoo social tension of yours. It was the activity itself that embarrassed me. Let's take an example of falling down. If you fall down in your house, you get up, no big deal. But if you fall down in front of an auditorium of people, it's a completely different experience, with the only difference being that you're in front of a bunch of people. Another interesting thing about embarrassment, even though I describe it like a panic attack, is if you had this most embarrassing moment of your life and you were all alone, you would be a very interesting case study. Embarrassment pretty much requires the presence of other people. I don't think I covered everything. It seemed like I missed a few things, but I guess we'll move on to the curve here. For those not familiar with the bell curve, it's just a way of separating a population into subgroups. In this case, I'm separating the human population into subgroups according to their reaction to social tension, some baseline level of social tension, like say being in the same room with people. The larger groups are higher up on the graph, and the smaller groups are down toward the bottom. The autistic side of the graph goes from your basically shy people, which are the largest groups of autistics, to catatonic, down toward the bottom. The entire autistic graph is all about decreasing functionality. The smaller groups have less and less functionality as far as society is concerned. But basically, the frequency of these episodes kind of determine your point on this graph, how far down you go, and your reaction to those episodes, the severity. Now the embarrassment description that I gave is not the one I had. I had a much more severe one. My most embarrassing moment, I completely locked up like a statue. So I can sympathize with people farther down the range. Understand this is just one aspect of the human psyche that this graph is looking at. There are multiple bell curves for different aspects of the human psyche. Now, a lot of stuff gets lumped in with autism, learning disability. I think it's another bell curve. I think you can be an intelligent autistic or not so intelligent autistic. Apathy gets included in here a lot, but I think empathy, apathy is another bell curve. And each person falls on different places on all these different bell curves, and basically it just means we're all our own unique flavor of crazy. Now I have the opposite of autistic as being manic. It's not quite the clinical definition, but it's really close. A manic has a positive reaction to social tension. They actually seem to enjoy it more than not having it. Being alone with their thoughts is like nails on the chalkboard. It's extremely stressful to not have social tension in their life. But just because they have a positive relationship with social tension doesn't mean that social tension can't rise to a level that they also find painful. That's the reason I believe most people have had this embarrassment episode. Except for manics who fall down deep into that curve. They've probably never been embarrassed because social tension can never get high enough for that. These are individuals that are somewhat scared. The largest group of manics are what we describe as the natural-born leaders of society. These are individuals that don't just tolerate being in front of people, but they actually prefer it, to be the center of attention. Autistics really like this group of people because they are like little black holes for social attention. They suck it up. We envy them, but we like having them around. You go to a cutoff point where the being manic is more negative than positive. You have your drama queen, an individual who has to stir things up and to increase the social tension in their lives. But in doing so, they increase the social tension for everybody around them. And as you go down the curve, it gets more negative. Normal social interaction is not enough. These individuals have to go into taboo and illegal activities. At the bottom of the curve is probably some kind of serial killer. It's a little bit facetious on my part to say that, but I think killing a person face to face and hiding it from society would pretty much be the crack cocaine of social tension. And as you get down on that end of the manic spectrum, it's like a drug. Now, admittedly, that individual would have to also be very deep into the apathetic bell curve also. I think if it was a deep manic / empathetic person, they'd probably use some kind of substitution. Thrill seeking is another bell curve, but that life-death tension could be substituted for the social tension that you can't achieve. So they'd probably do these life-threatening activities to get the attention they want or need. So that covers most of it, I think. It's been bouncing around in my head. So now for the bombshell. If you shifted through the universe atom by atom, you would not find one single atom of social tension. Nor have we discovered any force that affects atoms in a way that we can perceive that would be social tension, like sound waves or heat. There were some paranormal experiments, exploring the myth that you could sense someone staring at you. You know, the hairs on the back of your neck would stand up. But I think those were inconclusive. And I know from personal experience, as sensitive as I feel towards social tension, if I went to a room that I thought was empty, that actually had someone hidden from view, my people radar wouldn't go off and like, oh, there's a person here. So social tension does not exist. But yet we all perceive it. We all experience it. Where does it come from? It comes from you. You're manufacturing it. So why did I spend an entire video talking about something that doesn't exist? Because as automatic as hitting that panic button is for your psyche in defense of this thing that it's creating, the mind is a wild and crazy place. As automatic as that is, I believe this perception of social tension is created even deeper in your mind. You probably could force yourself not to experience it, but it'd be like trying to stifle a sneeze. You'd have to stop everything you're doing to do it, and that would kind of defeat the purpose. And as soon as you stop fighting, you'd experience it again. As far as the human mind is concerned, perception is not 9/10 of the law, it is 10/10 of the law. So even though it doesn't exist in the real world, it might as well.
So basically I'm saying that we are screwed. Well, not exactly. I do believe that we were born somewhere on this bell curve, each and every one of us. That we have a naturally hardwired perception of social tension and a reaction to it, either positive or negative. But I do believe that people all the time, even though they were born on one area of the curve, have lived their lives in another area. I believe these individuals have been able to manage their panic button, make it less hair-triggered through behavioral changes and defense mechanisms. And also when they feel themselves going into one of these spells, they can pull themselves out of it. But I think a person will always have a negative reaction or a positive reaction to social tension. I don't think that can really be behaviorally modified. There are also bad defensive strategies that have been deployed. I think most magicians probably fall into the autistic realm. But if you want to make money as a magician, you've got to perform. So a lot of them have used drugs and alcohol to operate in the other side of the bell curve. So that's pretty much all my thoughts on this subject. This video I haven't really been wanting to do because it is a subject that's close to home to me. I don't have any clinical background in autism, but I do feel like I got some insider information.